Hey folks, how are you? Hudson, Wisconsin, Durham, North Carolina, Conroe, Texas, Long Island, New York, San Francisco. What a great city. Nashville. Speaking of great cities, Tucson, Hillsboro, Fairfield, Connecticut, Ann Arbor, Michigan. I love that town. Richland, Washington. Hi. I hope you know my friend there. Um, Middletown, Connecticut, Wilmington, North Carolina, historic town. I just want to look at where y'all from. Jupiter, Florida, Graham, North Carolina. Waiting here on Facebook. We got Winchester, Kentucky. Nice. Laguna Hills, California. Another person from Nashville. I hope y'all are voting. Danvers, Mass. Who sews? Interesting. I've been knitting like a crazy woman because my specialty is Christmas stockings. And as usual, I'm running behind. St. Charles, Missouri, Franklin, Mass. Where are my Facebook people here? North Carolina, Falmouth, Massachusetts. I grew up in Yarmouth, you know. Seattle, Oslo, Norway. There we go. Well, I guess we're just going to have to assume that the Facebook people are coming on or oh, somebody says Facebook is here. Excellent. And I'm seeing a lot of Tennessee people. And like all of us, I'm wondering what on earth is going to happen there. But I will get to that. Let me get down. So just so you know, the weather here is truly awful. We have freezing rain and sleet. And I live up an extremely steep hill. So I'm not going to run over today. I don't expect. I should get back on the road to get home. Anyway, you had a lot of questions today, and I'm going to start with the obvious one. You had a lot of questions about what's going on with this so-called double tap strike on the small boat out of Venezuela, or apparently off the coast of Venezuela, off the coast of Venezuela on September 2nd. Let's go back just a step, and let me remind you that all of the strikes, I believe there are 19 of them now, with as many as 76 people dead, have been conducted by the Trump administration under conditions that most legal observers say are not legal. So what that means is that normally the way that the United States handles they stop drugs coming into the United States, although it's a little doubtful whether these were actually aimed at the United States because the small boats could not carry enough fuel to get to the United States. But the way normally those trafficking boats are stopped is that the Coast Guard and similar authorities usually shoot the motors, which is, I'm laughing a little bit because if you've grown up around those kind of motors, you know they're actually pretty delicate. And you shoot the motors don't go anymore. You board the boats and you take the people on them to the authorities in their countries. And that's always been the way that America has handled the stopping of the kind of drug traffickers that these allegedly are. But the Trump administration has decided instead simply to blow up those boats with the argument that the people on them are what they call narco terrorists. And there's a bunch of things about that are funny before I get into the legality. The first of those is that one of the things you hear White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt do a lot is talk about the flooding of the United States with drugs, and then she transitions immediately into fentanyl and the huge numbers of deaths that the United States has had from fentanyl. But what is being trafficked from Venezuela is not fentanyl. It's largely cocaine. Fentanyl comes in a different way. So there's already a sleight of hand there. There's also the fact that the president has pardoned a number of major drug dealers, including one just yesterday, I think it was published today, who imported huge amounts of cocaine to the United States. But then there is also the legal issue. And the legal issue is that nobody has seen any evidence that these people are in fact drug traffickers. This is just the administration say so. And there is a real legal issue with just declaring a number of cartels to be at war with the United States. And, you know, you can see this playing out in a number of ways with the fact that the administration said it does not have to go to Congress for a declaration of war or for the continuation of its continuing strikes under the War Powers Act of 1973. But a lot of Congress people are like, hang on just a minute here. You're engaged, you're killing people, and you're doing it without any input from the United States Congress. So that was already a problem. Okay, so that was already an issue, and an issue that a lot of people think was illegal. However, there's something else that went on with this so-called double tap of September 2nd. And that is that after the initial strike appeared to leave, of the 11 people who were on the ship, it's not a ship really, it's a boat. Just so you know, you can put boats on ships, but not ships on boats. That's how you remember which is which. Boats are little, ships are big. And these are little boats. There were 11 people on that boat, and the first strike apparently left 2 men alive clinging to the wreckage. So then there was a second strike that killed those 2 people. And then as of this afternoon, just before I came over here, news that there were 2 additional strikes to remove the wreckage, to destroy the wreckage, to leave no trace of what had happened. And the issue with that is a huge one, because even by the standards that the administration itself has laid out, this idea that they can, declare themselves judge and jury and executioner for these people on these boats, you can't kill people who are first, and those are civilians, by the way, but you cannot kill people who are outside, who are no longer engaged in any way. That is, it's called being outside of combat. That is a war crime. And that is illegal. And it is, as Angus King, an independent of Maine, said yesterday, it is also murder. So the real question is, who gave the order? And I'm going to come back to that in just a second. But I would like to point out the story of war crimes and the story of the laws of war is a long one, and it's a really interesting one, and it's worth spending some time on. One of these days, I'm actually going to write a letter about it, because it's a weird thought, right? That during war, you're going to have rules. I mean, that seems like it's kind of crazy, but in fact, we get rules about war in the middle of the 19th century that begin actually here in the United States and in a few other countries, in part because of the dramatic change of what war means in the middle of the 19th century when you get the concept of artillery and rifled bullets. Because what that does is it opens up the concept of total war, and that involves a lot of non-combatants. So beginning with that concept, you start to get governments saying, what do we do? Like, can we kill everybody? Can we not kill everybody? Because they're concerned partly about morality, but they're also concerned about rebuilding. Like, what does it mean to be at war with the population? And so out of things like the American Civil War and out of other wars as well, you start to see the rise of codes that say, you can kill somebody during wartime, but you can't rape somebody during wartime. You can kill a soldier, but you can't kill somebody who surrenders. And so they come up with these ideas that have rules around them. And that's a really important concept because, first of all, it makes it possible for societies to reconcile after a war, but also because it protects non-combatants. So it's designed to protect non-combatants. So for the United States to go outside of those and do what certainly looks to observers like a war crime is a really big deal. Now let me go back again to somebody like Pete Hegseth and what he stands for and what he has done. Hegseth, if you recall, was briefly in the military himself and really made his career as somebody talking about getting rid of the woke military, and you got to stop tying our hands, and you've got to be able to, attack the enemy without your hands being tied. And he really kind of embodied this whole cowboy masculinity, the idea that rules were for somebody else. He wrote a book about it, and if you remember during his confirmation hearings, again, Angus King of Maine is why it's on my mind. I watched a lot of Angus King yesterday. Angus King of Maine, who sits on both the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Armed Services Committee, and is, clearly a very, very thoughtful senator, really pressed him again and again and again on his apparent disregard for the Geneva Conventions. And the Geneva Conventions are a series of those rules to protect non-combatants. And Hegseth refused to say he would support the Geneva Conventions. He's this guy who's, he's going to be out there killing people. So what happened is that last Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, a couple of Washington Post reporters, Ellen Nakashima and Alex Horton, reported that for the September 2nd strike, Hegseth had told the commander-in-chief of the special operations, a guy named Admiral Mitch Bradley, to leave no one alive, to kill everybody. And that he, in fact, because of that directive, had ordered this second strike. And that second strike, which is called a double tap, is a no-go, right? Okay, so this comes out, and then what happened from then on. You started to see at first the administration said this was entirely legal, and then they started to back away from it. And then last night, Pete Hegseth posted an AI-generated children's book cover from Franklin the Turtle, with Franklin killing people in small boats. It was really, really horrific. And all of that led us to today. And what happened, and last night as well, because today's Tuesday, I guess, yesterday, Carolyn Leavitt, White House press secretary, said that, in fact, while there had been a second strike, that it was not Pete Hegseth who had given the order. Pretty clearly setting up Admiral Bradley to take the fall for this. And last night, that's what Pete Hegseth did. He said, I support this wonderful admiral for everything he has ordered, including the September 2nd strikes and everything from then on. So what he is doing is he's throwing Admiral Bradley absolutely under the bus. All right, so that brings us to today. And a lot of you have asked what's going to happen with that, and I'm going to urge you to take a really big picture look here, because senators, including the heads of the Senate Armed Services Committee and the House Armed Services Committee, both Republicans, are like, we're looking into this because this is not okay. They were already pissed off about the operations in Venezuela, or off the coast of Venezuela, in the Caribbean and in the Eastern Pacific. So they were already mad, and they do not want there to be war crimes committed on their watch, partly because this is badly going to hurt American foreign policy, but also partly because we got people all over the world. If we're engaging in war crimes, other people can do the same thing. I mean, this is military 101 stuff. So the senators and the House Republicans, not all of them, but a lot of them, have said this is not okay. This is not okay. And under normal circumstances, somebody's head would roll over this. All right, so hold that thought, okay? Now let's go to what happened today. Today, let's go back to the middle of the night, actually. In the middle of the night last night, Trump began posting on Truth Social, and he did it with an almost manic quality. He posted more than 100 times. I think it was more than 200 times. I don't remember that off the top of my head, but he just was madly posting and posting and posting and posting and posting. And in a way that people, even at the time, were like, look at this, look what's happening. This is bonkers, right? So he does that. And then there's also been this big thing about his the posting that he did over Thanksgiving, which was, again, really unhinged. And because of that, one of the things he did is he called Minnesota Governor Tim Walz a slur, what I will refer to as the R word, but a slur that is just so profoundly. That's one of my big, so not okay. But somebody asked Tim Walz about it yesterday, and he was like, listen, something's wrong with the guy. Like, it's Thanksgiving. Everybody else is playing Yahtzee, eating and watching football, and he's out there posting these screeds about getting rid of immigrants, and he's going to denaturalize them and using the R word, and he's not okay. And he had this MRI in October that he told us about by accident in November. We want to see what's in that MRI. So yesterday, so that night, Trump was on Air Force One, and he said to a reporter, "Sure, I'll release it. I don't know what it was for." Like, who doesn't know what an MRI is for? I don't, but I know it wasn't my brain because I aced it. I aced the cognitive test. He doesn't seem to be aware that the cognitive tests that he's getting appear to be for dementia. But then yesterday, the White House released the results, but they didn't say MRI. They said imaging, which may, I mean, I am so not a doctor, but a lot of people reading that said this is not the kind of imaging we are talking about. And it's very clear that he is not, that this memo does not mention his brain and any scans that they might have done for brains. And obviously you do brain scans to check on for dementia, for the health of the brain tissue. So that's all in the background. So then we get all this posting in the middle of the night. And then today, Trump did a televised cabinet meeting. And everything that I just told you is the lead up to this, for me, for the lead up to this televised cabinet meeting, because a lot happened in that. So the first thing that happened is that Trump appears to have taken the side of Pete Hegseth. Hegseth basically blamed Bradley for the order again, and Trump basically stood behind Hegseth. Also, everybody around the table just completely said Trump was the best thing since sliced bread. Kristi Noem said he had stopped hurricanes from hitting the United States this year. You know, nothing was ever as great as Trump. And then he did a few things, one of which was he goes on a long rant about immigrants, about Somali immigrants. Obviously, Tim Walz is in his head because there are a lot of Somali immigrants in Minnesota. But also he went on a tirade about how affordability is a Democrat scam, is what he said, the word affordability, because it's not, you know, they're turning the people's concerns about the cost of living into some kind of political event by Democrats. Okay, so that's out there. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. And you have the cabinet members all sort of saying he's just the best thing ever. And then as the cabinet members are saying this and how great he is, and he's the only one who can stop a war in Russia and on, he falls asleep. I mean, the dude cannot stay awake. And the reason I'm mentioning all of this stuff is because, well, you asked questions specifically about that double tap. There's a larger story here. And the larger story is that Trump and his administration is crumbling. He is crumbling. He is, I mean, just watch him. You don't have to take my word for it. Just watch him. And imagine what you would do if that were your relative, one. And two, remember that he is the most powerful person in the world with control over American nukes, the American Defense Department, with everything the United States of America stands for. And so he's crumbling. But now they've also got all these other problems. So you've got Hegseth deeply enmeshed in what certainly appears to be a war crime, even though he's blaming Bradley for it. Obviously, people know what happened, and I can't imagine they're all going to stay quiet. You've got Kristi Noem, the Secretary of Health and Homeland Security, who has been fingered as the person who overrode or who ignored Judge Boasberg's order not to deport that plane that Abrego Garcia was on all the way back at the beginning of the term. I have my doubts about whether or not it actually was her who gave the order personally, but that's the person that the administration has identified. You've also got her having the issue of funneling all that money, I think it's $220 million, to a contractor who subcontracted out things like the advertising that the Homeland Security Department has been doing, of like her riding the horse everywhere and all that, and being connected to some of those subcontractors, personally connected, especially through Corey Lewandowski, who's one of her advisors. Then you've also got this new report about the head of the FBI, Kash Patel, and his deputy head, Dan Bongino, that some of the people involved in the FBI have been reported that where they say these guys just don't have any concept of what they're doing. So you've also got the fact that very quietly, a number of Trump's appointees have not been going through. They've had to pull, I think it's 57 of them, because they're just not being vetted. And even Kennedy of Louisiana, Senator Kennedy of Louisiana, is like, they're not even vetting these people. So you've got this kind of stew going on in the executive branch where you've got real issues of competency. And then, of course, you've got Pam Bondi, who is, her stuff's blowing up in her face. You've got those real issues of competency and what certainly seems to be, for a number of the people involved, issues of legality. That's what's going on in the executive branch. Now, you've got the legislative branch, the Congress, the House and the Senate, both controlled by Republicans, but both of which are exceedingly nervous about how angry the American people are about the executive branch, because the executive branch has just been going wild, right? It's been doing whatever it wants. So now you've got the legislative branch where these people need to get reelected or have to at least answer to their constituents. And they're angry. In the House, Republicans are angry at House Speaker Mike Johnson, who is refusing to put forward anything that Trump doesn't want. And in the Senate, they're mad at the House, but they're also mad at Trump because, for example, one of the things on the table right now is trying to extend those premium tax credits that are going to support the cost of healthcare policies under the Affordable Care Act. Now, Trump doesn't want those. Trump wants to get rid of that, and a lot of hard-right MAGA wants to get rid of that. But 78% of Americans want those extended. And the states that are going to be hardest hit by the loss of those are Republican states. So they've been trying to come up with a solution in Congress, especially in the Senate, but they can't because Trump won't settle on what he wants, and they don't want to bother to write something knowing that it'll go to him and he simply won't sign it. So now they're saying, well, it looks like that's dead in the water. That's going to be real popular, isn't it? So you've got this struggle going on within the Republican Party, but you also have a struggle going on now between certain Republican members of the Senate especially, but of the Senate and the House, and Trump loyalists. And you can see this playing out in a lot of different ways. You can see it with the number of discharge petitions that you're suddenly seeing in the House of Representatives. Discharge petitions are really rare. But you've got suddenly now, I think we're up to 3 discharge petitions. 2 have been successful, and now there's a discharge petition to try and get the ACA tax credits extended. So you're starting to see pushback against Johnson, and you're also starting to see senators really, really angry because Trump doesn't seem to care about any electeds. He seems to be like, I'm going to do whatever I want. He's not even trying to make nice with the American people. He sits there and says, affordability, everything's fine. But what's interesting about that whole concept of affordability is it's not just about the cost of coffee. It's not just about the cost of gas. It's not just about the cost of housing. What I think we are seeing is Americans across political parties finally articulating their frustration with a political system that has concentrated wealth among a very small group of people who now are easily identified as being part of what others have called, and I have adopted, the Epstein Class. Those people who have more money than God and who are untouchable, who just can flout the law without any repercussions, or have been able to until now. And that cuts across parties, it cuts across professions, but you know exactly the kind of people that I'm talking about. So you got to throw that in this mix as well, and I'll come back to that in just a second. So you've got all these things going on, and you can see how scared the Republican electeds are right now if you look at the special election being held today in Tennessee. And if any of you are here from Tennessee and you are haven't voted yet, just turn me off and go vote, right? Because that special election in that district in the Tennessee district where it is being held, I believe that district went for Trump by 22 points. So less than a year after that election, are we less than a year? No, we're just over a year after the 2024 election. The Republicans should be able to run a stuffed animal in that election and win. But voters are so unhappy and are articulating their unhappiness to the point that people have been pouring money into that election. And the Democrat is within striking distance of winning that election. And that's why somebody said, why is everyone paying so much attention to this special election in Tennessee? And the answer to that is that Democrats have been overperforming by between 14 and 16 points. This is a 22-point district, I think, off the top of my head. So everyone's watching to see how the Democrat will do, to see just how fragile the Republican MAGA coalition has been. But now let's go back quickly to what I was just saying about Trump not caring about what the voters want, because I think you can see this dramatically in a lot of ways. I mean, Carolyn Leavitt, the way she talks to people, Trump's inability to control himself when he calls a reporter piggy, for example, but also Hegseth's posting of that made up children's book, in which he appeared to make fun of open murder by the American people, because those people represent us, showed such a profound disrespect, not only for the murdered people and the country from which they came, but for us, but for those of us who say, we care about the laws of war. We care about laws. We care about the rule of law. And we're concerned that you stepped over it. Tom Nichols of The Atlantic, who's a scholar of the military and the national security, said he's like a punk. He's like some punk who got caught doing something wrong, and he's challenging the fuzz, that's an old-fashioned expression for the cops, to take him in because his daddy is, do you know who my daddy is? And that's kind of the feeling that you get from what the administration is doing. And that brings up another question. How long will the elected Republicans put up with that? Because the clear goal from the beginning of the Trump administration has been essentially to rig the 2026 and 2028 elections so Trump could never lose. He was pretty clear about that. Not Trump in 28. He's never going to make it that far. But that was pretty clearly what he was up to. It's not at all clear at this point that that's going to work, because the realignment that people like me see is one that is not simply the old Democrats, Republicans dichotomy, but it is a general realignment of the American people against this Epstein class. And that cuts absolutely across parties. This is how you get Marjorie Taylor Greene announcing she's going to resign right after she gets her pension and writing a screed that sort of says, I'm here for the American people. And a lot of people say, you can't trust her. Of course you can't trust her. But it's always important to watch how these people talk, because they are trying to model and reflect back what they're hearing from their constituents. So you're seeing it from Marjorie Taylor Greene. You're certainly seeing it from independents. And you are also seeing it from Democrats who are talking not only about not only about accountability, not only about affordability, but also pretty dramatically about reclaiming American democracy from this small elite that is trying to take everything. So if you are, a number of the comments that I always gather, where is there any hope? How can we hope for anything here? And the answer to that is stop thinking about individual crises. I mean, still participate in those. We need to protect our Somali neighbors. We need, what the things that ICE is doing are unconscionable. All of those things are still there and must be combated. The bigger picture, though, certainly seems to be an executive branch that is increasingly just essentially saying F you to the American people. And the question of how elected Republicans and other people in the country will respond to that. And if you're an elected Republican, what does that look like? Trump is falling apart. You know, watch him. He is falling apart. He's under enormous stress. He can't stay awake in his own televised cabinet meeting. He's got incompetent people around him who are committing war crimes. And those Epstein files are, I believe we're at 19 days toward the deadline of when those things have to come out. And a lot of people are like, well, they're not going to turn them all out. No, I feel certain they're going to do their best to hide them and to do, to redact them and do all kinds of stuff. But I keep saying to you, think of how many people have seen them and who can say, wait a minute here, I saw that document and what's missing from it is X. And a lot of them are not going to be willing to continue to cover up for people who are doing things like committing war crimes. So where you should get hope is the fact that we are watching this administration really sort of collapse in real time. I mean, it's a lot coming at us all the time, but it's in many ways fascinating. A lot of these storylines are sort of coming to a crashing end. But now that being said, it's going to get really ugly. It's going to get really ugly before it gets better. So, all of those sayings about, narcissists ending up in madness and, the dying mule kicks hardest and a cornered rat bites and all that sort of thing. That's what we're going into in December, January, February. We're going into this crash between the executive branch, members of Congress, if they stand up to it, and the American people. So I'm not saying it's time to pop your champagne. I'm saying it is the larger picture is not of an administration that is consolidating power. It is an administration that is crashing in on itself. And you see this in the Trump's popularity numbers, which are in the mid 30s. And people say that's still too many people. Remember that you're always, always, always going to have a reactionary movement is always going to have at least 22% to 25% of the people behind it for various reasons. But if your floor is 22% and he's at 35, he's not doing real well. And you've got the problem, the crisis of the economy. You've got the crisis of the appointees. You've got the crisis of Trump's own mental acuity. You've got all these things sort of crumbling at the same time or smashing together at the same time. Imagine what it would look like if you had a mentally competent, quite skilled politician doing what, consolidating the kind of power that Trump is doing. It'd be a very different story altogether. So that's out there in this moment as well. Let me see, did I get everything here? Yeah, I think I got everything that you were interested in, at least that I could do in this amount of time. So what would I tell you to watch now? If I were telling you what are the things to watch, I'm watching Trump's brain. First of all, that's the first thing. And second of all, watch what especially the Republicans in the Senate do. That's where the real pressure is starting to ramp up, but there should be a lot more of it. And it'll be interesting to see what happens in that Tennessee special election. Now, a lot of you have asked me to predict what's going to happen going forward. I don't know. We've never been in a moment like this in American history before. But I will tell you this. Now is the time to keep the pressure up. And for the next several months, by the way, when it is time to breathe, I will tell you when it is time to breathe. But right now, the more involved you are at the local level, at the state level, in protests, and those protests are economic as well as political, is supporting your neighbors, all the things that people are talking about doing out there. Spreading the word. What needs to happen is more Americans need to understand what is happening and why it matters, and also articulating what we want going forward, because we are not going back to January 19th, 2021. We're just not. But if we're not going to do that, let's make it better. Like, what are the issues that matter to you? I mean, I care about universal health care, but mostly I care about education and journalism. That's where my muscle is going to really go, is into trying to reshape American education. Figure out what your lane is and start getting involved with people who do that. That doesn't mean we have to have all the answers, but it does mean that when we hit the ground running, we want to be able to articulate what we want. And crucially, we want to have people in office who will be able to translate those desires into actual legislation and funding, that's actually quite hard as well. And we haven't talked a lot about that on in this channel, but I will, because articulating what you want is really important. But then electing the people who can pull the right strings is key to making those ideas actually become reality. And those are not the same skill sets. We need both of those sets of people. The people who can best articulate what we want are almost never those people who can figure out how to create coalitions that make them happen. And people often make that mistake of thinking that somebody who articulates a vision very well is going to be able to make it happen. It's just a different skill set, and they can't do it. And similarly, sometimes you want those invisible workhorses because they know which buttons to push to get enough people on board to make something happen. So going forward now, keep up the pressure and don't get discouraged. What is happening is horrific. Don't forget that ever, because that's really important that we keep that naivete, if you will, to care deeply about our humanity and our laws. But while keeping that in mind, it's important to remember that the larger picture is one in which this administration is under enormous stress, and the momentum is on the side of those people pushing back against it. And the more voices we have in this, in whatever way you are comfortable speaking up, the better chance we have of both getting rid of those oligarchs who are trying to destroy the United States, but also of building something on the other side that more adequately addresses the larger needs of the American people, which is, after all, the point of a democracy. So I actually kind of took the day off today, because for once it felt like I wasn't the only one who was keeping tabs on this administration and really pushing hard. Now it turns out I do have something to say, but now is not the time to despair. To the contrary, this is the time really to bear down and recognize that time and the ravages of age and of stupidity are on the side of American democracy right now. They're really helping us out. Trump's not going to get better. These guys are not going to suddenly become more competent at their jobs. The economy is not suddenly going to miraculously recover. And we are increasingly getting our muscle behind us. So on that note, I'm going to go back and hit the road. But I do want to point out that interestingly enough, I've been doing a ton of interviews lately. And they're great fun because I get to ask elected people mostly the things that I care about, and I have sort of long form, and I don't care about gotcha stuff at all. So I really want to know what they think. And as a result of that, I have a number of important interviews coming up over the course of this week and next. On Thursday, I'm doing an interview with Senator Warner. Mark Warner, who's on the Intelligence Committee and has been for a long time. But I'm especially excited about tomorrow at noon. I am interviewing Zoran Mamdani of New York City. And I'm really excited about that. We will talk about his articulated principles of democracy and how he is hoping to transition them into legislation. So if you're free tomorrow at noon, and if you're not, tune in, but if you're not, we will obviously post it later. And Senator Warner on Thursday, and then later on, Senator Warner is at 11:15 on Thursday, and then at 12:30, I'm doing a live with Mark Elias. And I think that may not be it for the day. I think I'm also going to be with Awaj Ali later on in the week too. So anyway, I'm around doing a lot of this stuff, and it's been really interesting. So tune in if you can, and otherwise keep the faith. And I will see you Thursday at 6 o'clock for another politics chat. And by then we'll know a lot. It's going to be a busy week. Thanks for being here.